So there's no best meditation method, we know this, but after 15 years of meditating for an hour a day, this is what I do pretty much automatically. And it's the best in my experience with the goal of creating a stable focus, presence, and awareness that's emotionally connected, but also fairly effortless in the way that you create that. Because on the one side of the spectrum, you have the type of meditation that's really rigorous, but it might be subtly stiff or emotionally disconnected. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have the, woo, like I'm off in the astral realm somewhere, and it feels amazing, but I'm kind of like ungrounded and it doesn't exactly translate to daily life. So this is somewhere right down the middle, and it might be like, whoa, this is wild. This is not what I think of when I think of meditation, but there's a method to the madness, and once we unpack it, it'll start to make sense in a way that you can experiment with for yourself and start to get the benefits of. So, step 1, picking your focus object. So this could be obviously breath, hands, whatever you like. For me, I like to do all of my body and all the space around me that I can sense, which is a lot. Obviously, normally you want to build up to that, especially if you're not an experienced meditator. And even for me, once I select that as my focus object, all of that is one seamless field of awareness. It still takes time for my attention and my consciousness to catch up and fill in those proverbial blanks, but that's what I like to pick. And so I'm aware of everything as my central focus object, and naturally you come back to that over and over when your mind wanders in a normal meditation method, and that is indeed the default foundation for what we could call, for the sake of this video, intuitive meditation. And that can be a perfect starting point. Obviously, when you're beginning meditation, you probably want something structured and simple and measurable to come back to and know where you're at. But as you progress, you might start to feel that it's sort of subtly mechanical and rigid in a hard to define way, and that's because it is. Which brings us to the second component, letting go technique, which is a variation on somatic experiencing. It's from the book Letting Go by David Hawkins. If you haven't tried it, you can try a guided version here, start to master it, and you can start to apply it to this method of meditation if you so choose. But some meditation methods do account for interacting with sensations and emotions in this way, but many, it's sort of implied like, all right, if an emotion or sensation comes up, notice it, but don't get too lost in it. Bring your attention immediately back to the focus object. In this case, we're not getting lost in it. But as soon as an emotion or a sensation, whether it's like a feeling of sickness in your body or a feeling of heat or an emotion that's starting to bubble up, gets to like a 4 or 5 out of 10 in intensity, like it starts to become quite noticeable, you turn your full attention to it and make it the focus object of your meditation until it passes. So you place all your attention on the sensations and intensely, in a relaxed but intense way, focus on it fully until the wave passes through and it starts to dissipate, and then you return your attention back to your focus object at that baseline level. This way you're not using meditation as a dissociative mechanism. You're not using it to avoid your emotions, to push down uncomfortable sensations, to disassociate from them completely. That can be useful if it's necessary or helpful to you at a given point, but in general, it's not a sustainable strategy. You want to learn to allow these things to come up in waves as they do, so it's very intuitive, it's very flowing and responsive to whatever happens to be happening within you at any given point, and it's just very effortless because you're not trying to make anything happen. You're just responding to the waves as they flow to you, and then you're returning back to shore of your focus object. All the while, though, you're still maintaining and cultivating a state of intense focus and presence because you've made those sensations the object of your intense focus while they're there. So you don't really miss a beat in the meditation. So this is where it gets super interesting. The third component of this is light parts work. So if you're not familiar with parts work, you can check out the book No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz, and this could be a complete paradigm shift if you're not familiar with it. But the idea here and the main insight that you want to get out of parts work is that Richard Schwartz basically discovered that when he held space for his clients' parts, their higher self emerged, and we could call that the meditative self, the self that is aware and wise and present and calm and compassionate and all the things. But it arose spontaneously when he held space for all the parts that were coming up. Not by neglecting them, not by ignoring them. We want to distinguish this from chatter, just the aimless default mode network, background yappery that happens in most of our minds during meditation. That's like a low level of intensity. We can safely make a note of that and then just return to our focus object. Again, when it gets in the 4 or 5 out of 10 intensity range, when you start to feel some internal momentum or pressure behind something that's coming up mentally, that's often a part. We can call it a sub-personality that's trying to get your attention for a reason. Now, most meditative methods would say, make a note of that, and then return to your focus object. Again, in my experience, I found this to be effective, but overall very inefficient. Because that part, if you conceptualize it as that, if it's trying to tell you something or get your attention for a specific reason, will just keep barking at you for the next 5 or 10 minutes until it's successfully been resuppressed by your meditative skill. So instead, you can do light parts work as opposed to deep parts work, which is where you're like going and rescuing your inner child from the depths of hell and then bringing it back into the present moment. We're not talking about that. We're talking about some light parts work, which is simply acknowledging, dialoguing, feeling whatever that part of you wants to feel. So, if that part of you comes up and it's trying to get your attention because of some problem that it's trying to work out in your life or something that it's trying to bring to your attention, it would be the equivalent of you meditating and your child comes and knocks on the door and you go, yeah, all right, I'm noticing my child knocking on the door, but I'm going to just return to my focus object. The kid's going to keep knocking on the door for 10 minutes. So instead, open the door. So in this case, start listening to what your part is desperately trying to grab your attention with. Dialogue with it, and in that meditative state that you've begun to cultivate, you can do this in a very clear and focused way. See what it has to tell you, acknowledge it, see if it has any insight, interact with it in a way that is hopefully fruitful and interesting, and then when it feels like it's been acknowledged and maybe worked out whatever it needs to work out with your conscious help, it's felt whatever it needs to feel, it will fall silent because it has nothing left to say. Because it's been acknowledged. It wants to be at peace as much as you want to be at peace. So do that focus parts work. Make that part your conscious focus object when it comes up and is demanding your attention in that way. And you will notice that that meditative state that you're seeking of relative silence and stillness, maybe not perfect, will start to spontaneously arise much quicker than you expect and than you're used to experiencing. So try this parts work meditation if you want to get a taste for this skill and for this experience, and then you can start to apply it to your longer meditation sessions. So if you're a beginner, you can try to apply these things. You might find it challenging. I'd probably recommend something a little more structured, but if you have a little bit of experience and you want to try applying this method, keep those 3 things in mind. Your baseline focus object, when sensation or emotion starts to get intense, as long as you can safely apply the letting go technique to it, allow it to come up, focus on the sensation, not the thoughts, allow it to flow through, and then return to your focus object. Likewise, if something is presenting mentally, psychologically, and you want to interact with that part, turn to it, dialogue with it, listen to it, acknowledge it, feel whatever it needs you to feel, and then when it falls silent on its own, when it relaxes on its own, return to your focus object. That way you're riding the waves, you're staying emotionally and mentally connected without needing to suppress anything, but you're also super focused and present in a stable way that feels connected and effortless. Like most forms of meditation, the longer you do this for, the deeper into that state you'll go, the more stable it will become. So do it for 10 or 20 minutes, you'll start to get a taste. 30, 40, you'll start to experience some really interesting things. 50, 60 minutes, get into that full hour range, and you'll really create it deeply in a way that translates to your life in a super effortless and stable way. If you want help with this, I have tons of free resources on this page. You can check out the playlist tab if you're looking for something specific. You can check out the courses in the description if you think you'd benefit from a more structured approach to cut your learning curve down. And let me know in the comments what you think of this, what your own meditation journey has yielded as far as what you've shifted into over time, what's been most effective for you. I would love to start a conversation, and I hope you have a great day.